Good evening, everyone, and we are continuing to study chapter 35 in Tanya. We covered 2 lessons already on this chapter, and we hope to complete the chapter. So I'm not going to go over what we studied, just to get into the topic of our discussion. We were searching for the reason why action counts. The first question was, what's my purpose? Why am I here? And we've discovered that God wants to be everywhere, and our life represents a candle. The candle is made out of the wick, the fuel, the oil, and the flame. The oil that gets consumed is what feeds the flame, and the flame will expand, be bigger or smaller based on the fuel. The fuel is not the neshama, the fuel is good deeds. Why? Because an object, in order for it to become a fuel for flame, it has to be totally nullified. That's why it gets consumed. Any object that's not completely nullified before the flame will not be fuel for the flame. Therefore, the neshama, the Rebbe said, even though it's extremely lofty, it's a part of God, but when it came down, even if it has love and fear of God, yet it is not before God. It's not completely nullified. Action, when I eat matzah on Passover, women light Shabbat candles, we put on tefillin, we give tzedakah, we give a good advice to a person, we subdue ourselves and are totally nullified for God. So the action is the fuel or the chips of wood that allow the flame to exist. So far, so good. The Rebbe then asked, which part of the human is going to house the wick, the one to house the flame? The flame is godliness. And the Rebbe explains, and that's where we are in the middle of, that the study of Torah, which is intellect, intellectual capacity, more of these refined powers of the human, spiritual powers of the human, will affect the neshama, because the neshama is the refined aspect of the human. However, good deeds, eating kosher, speaking or acting, giving, as I said, tzedakah, or walking to synagogue, action will cause the nefesh behamit, or now we're going to call it the body to become a house for God. So in which way the revelation of God is more expressed to a much deeper level? It is through good deeds, through action, as in comparison to the study of Torah. So far, so good. Here is one other topic.
Study of Torah, then the wick. Is that what you're saying?
What? The study of the housing of the flame is when study Torah, the neshama houses the flame. Is the wick. The wick is the one that holds the flame. It's not the fuel that fuels the flame, that allows the flame to exist, but something has to hold the flame intact. In other words, I have oil here. I cannot just throw a match on the oil and to get it, expect it to get ignited. I need a wick. What's the wick? What holds the flame? It is the neshama when study Torah, or the guf, the body. Is that clear? The rabbi is going to talk about a few more points that I want to expand on before we get to study it. So it should be very clear. What the rabbi is telling us is that whenever we studied in Tanya before, that when a man sins, his neshama is in exile. Do you remember that? In exile, in confinement? Yes, Ali? Now the rabbi is saying there is something called exile for klipa, exile for the animal soul. When man goes against its desire and will and habit and wanting and does something good, What they do is they confine the animal soul, put it in exile. You understand that? Putting it in exile because she wants this, the animal soul wants pleasure. What's in it for me now and here? When you tell the neshama, no, take some of the money that you earn and give it to someone. Take some of the time that you're blessed to it and dedicate it to study or to go to synagogue. Celebrate the Shabbat the way God wants. What we do is we go, the neshama, the animal soul, which is representing by the body, is in confinement, is in exile because against its will. Even though it did not change. By a tzaddik, it changes completely. By a Benoni, the fight with the animal soul continues. So even though I'm a perfect human being today, I am not going to be, don't take it for granted, expecting tomorrow to be as good as today. Why? Because today I was able to confine the animal soul, but tomorrow I can break loose and then run the show. Is that clear? So from this, the rabbi is going to talk, it's a subtle points, but they are very powerful. The rabbi is going to talk about two important points, and they are splitting. One is that the godliness or neshama, the soul, and the body are so opposite each other that they never come together. It's like taking the spirit, the most refined spiritual, and the most coarse physical, materialistic material, and trying them to connect. It doesn't work. You know what will connect them? A third object called memutza. Anybody heard the word memutza? Memutza is, we call it a broker or a middleman. Emtsai. Anybody heard the word emtsai? Emtsai is emtsa. Emtsa is middle. Memutza is the middleman in between. It's like when you have a buyer and a seller, you need a broker. Otherwise, what will happen? They'll exchange punches, right? I told you that bigger house. I told you I'm not selling you the stove. The other one wanted the shower heads. There's going to be, why do you have attorneys when there is a divorce? To make sure they stay alive, right? That's called memutza. Says the Rebbe that on one hand, you have the body. The body wants only me, 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 me. The godly soul wants God, 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 God. It's two opposites. It's an example would be, I heard of an example that one time a bird came down to the river, met a fish and told the fish, I'm in love with you. Can we get married? And the fish says, I never thought of it. It's a good idea. Let's get married. So they decided to get married. But then after the wedding, what happened? The bird soared up and the fish dove down deep. And that was the end of their marriage. You cannot expect, even if you force mechanically a fish and a bird under the chuppah, it will not make the marriage exist. That was last. Why? Simply because each one, the bird is soaring high and the fish is going down below as deep as they can. The goof, the body, and the neshama are two opposites. They never come close. So God gives the human a nefesh behamit, the animal soul. And the animal soul becomes the middleman, the broker. So long as the godly soul is forcing it to become subdued to the godly soul. Otherwise, it will do whatever the body wants. So you have an animal soul that, when in a good shape, in confined, as we just spoke, becoming a middleman, a broker, that broker the two opposites to come together. So I eat and I enjoy, but I do it for God's sake. And I make sure it's kosher. And I make a blessing before and after. And I save the tastiest food for Shabbat. And I only compliment people. I do not criticize or say something not nice about them. So I'm not talking about myself, of course. So
Surrender.
Yes,
When we learn Torah, the neshama is awake.
yes. Now, the Rebbe is going to talk about exile for the animal soul. It's exile, like just like the godly soul, the animal soul, whatever exile. That's when you do the right thing. And the other point I was going to make is that we have to be thankful to God for something called animal soul, because the animal soul is the only one that can bring the two opposites together. Therefore, it's not a curse. It's not bad. It just needs to be harnessed to do the right work. What if you let the animal soul loose? Then it goes haywire and it follows the body, and there is no becoming a middleman. Yes. The animal soul is confined. We put him in jail, put it in jail. By telling yourself, I'm not going to give in to you.
You're not confining, just not giving into it.
And by doing so, you're confining, you're tying their hands behind their back. Because naturally it knows spirituality because it's a nefesh. But it desires earthly. It wants, because it's the easiest pleasure. It's like a quick fix. It's like instant. It's like today. Forget about tomorrow.
People actually think that way. I mean, I act what I think is right. And I'm hoping it's mitzvah, doing the right thing, but I'm not thinking that I'm holding back the whatever it is, or the bad part of me, I'm doing what I think is correct. So I don't think about what effect it has. I just think that's the right thing to do.
So you are on a great spot, and I'm asking you to continue on and elevate to a higher spot, and that is try to find where you're challenged and say to yourself, let me tell the animal soul that that's not the right thing to do. I don't know which area, but find an area. What you're telling me is you're an advanced human. You are doing right. You're raised right. You know, it's all great. But doing better, that's the goal. That's why the sages say all my life I need to do teshuvah. You heard the statement we spoke. Kol yamav b'teshuvah. What do you mean? He didn't sin. Those sages didn't sin. But to the fact that God gave me another day, it means He wants me to elevate one more step. He wants me to move a little farther. And finding the challenging aspects of our life and trying to overcome them. Now, based on our understanding that it's a memutza, that the animal soul is a broker, now we understand why action is so valuable. Because action is the only one that can subdue the animal soul. You cannot subdue the animal soul with words. You can tell your animal soul you're evil. We read in the previous chapter how you can sometimes, at a very extreme situation, you call it very, very negative names. Remember that? Huh? You scream at it, right? But what the rabbi here is telling us, you want to subdue, confine the animal soul, make sure to harness the animal soul into action. And for that, remember I shared with you this story last week of the Alter Rebbe that came with Rabbi Chaim, and they accepted the quarter from that beggar, from that rich man, and then he ran after and gave him $1, then 5, then 20. What happens is, based on what I understood, is the newer understanding is every time he did good, he subdued his animal soul more and more until he was able to break loose and from all the tying and the confinement that the animal soul created for it. In other words, because the animal soul is a mediator and a broker between animal and godly, between the animal soul and God, between the body and the godly soul, by action, when I act, I will cause the animal soul to become part of the godly soul and follow the dictates of the godly soul. Yes.
Every day, 4 o'clock in the morning, the HR reports to the gym and gets in better shape, so when he sees you, they're like, kaboom.
That's it, kaboom. Very good. So what do? You said, I'm not giving up, I'm going to do good. I should say that my experience in the first few years in particular, there were times that I would, under normal circumstances, fall apart and get depressed because there was nobody coming in, there was no preschool, there was no minion. First 4 years, we had only Monday and Thursday, and not every time we had a minion. After 9, 10 a.m., and there was no money. I couldn't pay the bills, electricity, phone bills, so there was no money. So it can cause a person to get despair, literally. What I would do is say, let me do something. So first, it takes your mind off. Second, by acting, you let the animal soul off. You control the animal soul, and depression and despair is from the animal soul. We study it. So what I would do is literally, I'm not exactly, you think maybe of me very highly. I don't see myself that a holy man, but I'm showing you the facts. I would take the yellow pages. Do you remember yellow pages? I tell my children yellow pages, say, what yellow, why yellow? I show my Ari, I showed him a tape recorder and he has no idea what it is. The buttons, what are the buttons? Then I showed him a tape, the tape recording tape. He has no idea it's a waste of plastic. So I would take a yellow pages and look under businesses that begin with Hebrew words, Stein, Winter, Weinbaum, Winter, Weinman, Weinberg, Weinstein. And I can tell you there are some very active members, you may not see them every day, from those phone calls. The one that come to mind, I picked up the phone, I saw there was a name, and it was an attorney. And right away, usually I would have to talk to the secretary and call a few times. She says, I mentioned my name. He said, let me pass you through. And the attorney got on the phone. And I said to him, I would like to meet you. I'm a rabbi in town. I'm looking to connect with Jewish people. He says, of course, come on over. I came in and we met and we decided to study. We would study once a month and he would become a supporter. He just is retired a couple of years ago, but I would be very close with him. David Goldman, I'm sure you heard that name, the attorney, same story. I met him because I reached out to his partner. His partner was Bruce Kleinberg. I saw the name Kleinberg. I called the guy said, oh, yeah, I've been to Israel. I would love to study Talmud. And we would do a study every week. Bruce Kleinberg was an attorney that would share an office with David Goldman. At the time of those years, the early years, David did not want to have anything to do with an Orthodox Jew. Today, we're very, very close. He's supporting, and etc. It's all started from phone calls, from action. Again, I don't want to talk much about myself, but the story is, instead of allowing your mind to start wandering and unfortunately get into the wrong places, you are letting action to dictate, and you act in a positive way. Not only it did benefit in great ways, but it just simply kept me on the right path. And that's why action is so powerful, because the animal soul is the memutza. It's the middleman. We can harness the animal soul to listen and obey our command, the soul, the godly soul, through action. Here is a story before I start reading. The Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, was the student of the Mezritch Maggid, the Maggid of Mezritch. One time he visited the Maggid of Mezritch, and he was about to return back home. So the Maggid of Mezritch's son, Reb Avraham Amalach, Reb Avraham the angel, he was known as the angel. He was a very spiritual human, hardly connected to the physical world. And the Alter Rebbe was his chavruta, was study buddy. So as they were walking to the barn, to the stable, for the Alter Rebbe to get on the horse, on the wagon, to take him back to his town, Reb Avraham was walking with them, and he came close to the horse, so he gave a slap to the horse. And he says, I do that so the horses know that they are horses. According to another version, he says, I do that so that the horses should be ois horses. Ois means the horses, no horses. They should forget about who they are and become a little more elevated. And the Alter Rebbe later shared that he learned two things, based on the two statements he heard from Rabbi Avraham HaMalach. He decided to apply it into our discussion. You have a horse. A horse knows only hay, nothing else. You can slap it and say, become ois horse. Forget about horse. Be a more elevated existence. That's a tzaddik. A tzaddik has the power to turn the animal soul and turn it into a spiritual existence. But the rest of us, the Beinoni, you slap the horse and you say, the reason I do it is I want you to know that you are a horse. Know who you are. In other words, we need to know that the animal soul is a horse, and the horse is there to serve us, and not to go freely and decide which direction to go. Because once they lead, they're going to get us deep, deep into the forest. We're going to get lost in the jungle. Did you understand the point, Ali? And the other point, the Alter Rebbe would say, is that when you are traveling by a horse and buggy, there are three entities participating in the journey. You have the horses, you have the driver, the chauffeur, and you have the Hasidim that are sitting in the wagon. The wagon is not an entity, no. It's a non-existence. The horse is excited to go to the big town. You know why? Because he's going to get a much better type of hay. In the big town, they have a choicer type of hay. The chauffeur, the driver, goes to the big town. Why? So he can go to a tavern and have a good glass of vodka. And the Hasidim are going so they can be by the Fabringen when the Rebbe on Shabbat is speaking Advar Torah. They don't care about anything else. Now, the fact that because the horse wants to go for the hay, does it take away from the actual journey and the purpose that the Hasidim have? The answer is no. They hired the shofar. He trained the horses. So they all are there to serve the Hasidim. So the fact that the animal soul always is in it for what's in it for me should not detract us from allowing or forcing or making the animal soul do the right thing. So we give it Chabad, we give him reasons, but we need to harness the animal soul to serve us by allowing the godly soul to rule the body. Did you understand that, Ali?
I understand how we get the animal soul to serve us. I understand how we can stop them from misleading us. But how do we get them to serve?
The animal soul? When the animal soul allow you to come to synagogue, that's when he is able to make the body serve God. And therefore he's the media.
Stop the body serving God.
He did not stop the body, right? Right. So we call it, he allows, he made the body go, because the godly soul told him. So even if you tell him there is a good breakfast there, but the fact that he allowed the body to go, it's like the horses, they go for the hay, but the Hasidim are going for the Fabringen. Now, I want to share with you a story I just read today in preparing for Passover. There was a famous Rebbe that lived in Slonim. Slonim is a town in Hungary. He said that when the Jewish people stood by the riverbank of the Sea of Reeds, they needed a miracle to split the sea, right? And Moshe had to make the most famous miracle. There is a movie even after that miracle. He said, I don't understand. Let them bring the shikar from Slonim, the drunken. There was a famous drunken man in Slonim that used to drink galore. Moshe could have taken him and he would have drank the whole Sea of Reeds. They don't need a miracle. After thinking a while, he says, "Oh, now I know why not. Because when he pees twice as much." Did I cross the line?
No,
I want to test it. Ah, we are going to read in the text on page 477, I believe, in the middle. True, the divine soul is the force motivating one's observance of mitzvot. Yet, the divine soul cannot directly activate the body to perform a physical action. To don the tefillin, for example, it can accomplish this only through the agency of the animal soul, which serves as a medium between the divine soul and the body. In the Alter Rebbe's words, do you remember what I told you? It's the broker, it's a middle. For without this power of animal soul, the divine soul would not affect the body at all, since it is spiritual and the body physical and corporal, so that the body and divine soul are antithetical, as are the spiritual and material dimensions generally. Remember, I told you the bird and the fish wanted to get married. The intermediary between them is the vitalizing animal soul clothed in man's blood, which is in his heart and throughout his body. The nature of the animal soul is such that the coarsest, most material level of its spiritual substance is capable of clothing itself within the blood. Since the animal soul is the divine soul's medium of affecting the body, its active power is also absorbed into holiness when one performs a mitzvah. Right, Ali? So when I go to synagogue, when I celebrate Shabbat, when I eat matzah and Passover, I'm able to use the animal soul, which is a medium between this godly soul and the body, making the body serve God. Although the substance and essence of the animal soul is in his heart, that is, its evil midot, its evil emotional character, have still not been absorbed into holiness. In other words, the animal soul is not a tzaddik. He does not change. He still wants non-kosher. He wants to go partying. He doesn't care about God's commandments. However, his force, remember, we're going to talk about exile. As explained in chapter 12, only in the case of tzaddikim are the evil midot themselves transformed into holiness. In others, only the animal soul's garments, its faculties of expression by means of which a mitzvah is accomplished, are absorbed into holiness, not the midot, not the emotions, which constitute the animal soul's essence. Nevertheless, this fact does not prevent the light of the Shekhinah from suffusing the entire body, as Alter Rebbe concludes shortly. Yet, because the evil midot, are subjugated to holiness and against their will, they say Amen, agreeing to acceding to the performance of the mitzvah through the strengthening of the divine soul in the brain, which masters the heart, as discussed in chapter 12. Although the emotions of the Benoni have not been transformed into good, he nevertheless has the power to control them by means of his mind through contemplating God's greatness. In this way, the Benoni can direct his heart as he chooses insofar as the actual performance of the mitzvot is concerned. In other words, the Benoni does not become a righteous man. His essence, his midot, his emotions are still evil. But the actions, the garments of the human thought, speech, and action are only concentrating on doing good. And in that way, he's forced to obey the godly soul. And the evil midot are at such time when one exercises the natural mastery of brain over heart by contemplating God's greatness in a state of exile and sleep, that is, impotent, as mentioned above in chapter 12. So the rabbi is telling us you can put the animal soul into exile. You don't change it, you don't kill it, but you, so to say, tie its hands behind its back, and is unable to express itself. Therefore, this incorrigible nature of the animal soul's evil midot does not prevent the Shekhinah from resting on one's body at this time. Therefore, says the Rebbe, when the one is involved in doing mitzvot, even though in his heart he despises it, godliness will rest. Just as I told you, a child that is told by his father, you want to eat you have to eat matzah on the night of Passover. He eats it begrudgingly. But when he does that, the action is involved in serving God, and the Shekhinah, godliness, will rest upon him, even though his animal soul is fully intact, and his midot, his essence of the animal soul, is very strong. The Alter Rebbe goes now on to explain how it is possible for one mitzvah to draw the Shekhinah upon one's entire body. Says the Rebbe, this resting of the Shekhinah means that the power of the animal soul clothed in the act of that constitute the mitzvah, that is, the power in the hand donning tefillin, is actually absorbed into the divine light and merges with it in perfect unity. Thereby one draws down a ray of the light, wherein the particular power has been absorbed upon the totality of the animal soul throughout the body, and upon the entire body as well. This ray of divine light illuminates one's soul, one's animal soul and his body in a manner of encompassing from above, surrounding them from head to the foot. Says the Rebbe, when you do a mitzvah, even though it's involved only the hand or the feet, because it is the expression of the animal soul, it's the garment of the animal soul, through that deed, one single deed, it affects the entire body, all-encompassing godliness. So that becomes the wick that's holding the flame of God. This explains the expression appearing in the passage from Zohar quoted at the beginning of the chapter. The Zohar says that the Shekhinah rests upon his head, specifically upon, that is, encompassing him from above, upon his head, not inside his head, because it's all encompassing. When a man does a mitzvah, by get involved with action of a mitzvah, the Shekhinah, godliness, is resting upon his head, all encompassing. And in a similar vein, the expression upon every assembly of 10 Jews, the divine presence rests, means that the light of the divine presence does not permeate them, but illuminates them from above. It says on top of every 10 men who gather together, every Jewish man who get together, God will rest. It's not entering, penetrating them, but it's all encompassing. That's the power of a minyan. So even if there is no Torah message that is shared or prayer, just the fact that more than, at least 10 men are there, there is a powerful godliness that rests there. How much more so when they pray or they study, it's much, much greater. Henceforth, heretofore, various levels in the resting of the Shekhinah have been discussed. Number one, as it rests upon the divine soul, or upon the specific faculty of the animal soul that perform a mitzvah, that's two, upon the animal soul as a whole, and upon the body, and the latter two only encompassed by, but not permeated with the light of the Shekhinah. As to the light of the Shekhinah encompassing the body, within this level we find further subdivisions. The level which is the effect of the mitzvah, of a mitzvah, which encompasses any gathering of 10 Jews, even when not engaged in a mitzvah, and perhaps we may distinguish yet another level, that which rests upon even one individual Jew, even when he is not occupied with a mitzvah. In other words, a Jew by himself has godliness upon the flame, right? When the body is, when the godly soul has another level of godliness. Did I say the godly soul? Yeah, the godly soul is another level of godliness. When a man performs a mitzvah, the godliness rests on that body part and the animal soul in particular of that body part. and from that it affects the entire body. So again, it's all encompassing of the body to another level. Then when you have someone who is part of 10 men, 10 Jewish men together, God is all encompassing. When they study Torah or pray prayer, it's a much greater level of godliness. So there are different levels of godliness that rest upon a human. The Alter Rebbe now goes on to state that this variety of levels at which the Shekhinah becomes manifest does not indicate that any change in plurality in its light, God forbid. The variety means merely that the different objects of the light, the divine soul, the animal soul, the body, and so on, receive it in different ways and in the Alter Rebbe's words. In other words, the fact that you have different level of Shekhinah doesn't mean there are many Shekhinah. And one that affects the body, one affects the neshama, one affects 10 men, one affects 10 men who study. It's not the case. Says the Rebbe, none of these various forms in which the light of the Shekhinah is manifested, meaning the ways in which the Ein Sof light is revealed, God, the Ein Sof, is everywhere. It is only that he is concealed from his creatures. Thus, the uniqueness of the manifestation of the Shekhinah lies in the revelation of the Ein Sof. In other words, how much is revealed can be construed as a change in himself or as a plurality, God forbid. The fact that the Shekhinah manifests itself at some point, that is, in one soul through the performance of a mitzvah, whereas it had previously not been manifest, does not point to any change in God, nor do the various forms of manifestation indicates plurality within them. As we find, you understand the question, as we find in the tractate Sanhedrin, as we study it, whereas recorded that a certain heretic said to Rabban Gamliel, a heretic turned to Rabban Gamliel and says, you say that the Shekhinah rests on every assembly of 10. How many Shekhinahs have you? It says that a kol bei asara shchinta shaya, and every 10 men there is a Shekhinah. How many minions you have of 10? You have 100,000. So there are 100,000 Shekhinahs. And Rabban Gamliel replies with an analogy of the sun's light, which enters through many windows, etc. He said to him, there is one sun. How many lights does it permit? How many types? How many different lights? It depends how many windows, how many homes have windows. If you have 100,000 homes that all have windows, the sun's ray will enter, and in various degrees, depending on the size of the window, depending on the glass. Tinted glass will have less. Red glass will have red ray. But the sun has never been affected. In other words, when we say that my body is affected when I did a mitzvah, or my neshama gets a different level that permeates the soul, or the 10 men, when they study, Shekhinah is there. When 10 men are assembled without studying, Shekhinah is hovering over them. Shekhinah does not change and adjust itself. Shekhinah is one singular, only existence. It's us, just like the windows, different windows that you build to the home that will benefit from the sun in different ways. In our days, when I was younger, I used to say this, it's like water. Water is colorless. If I put it in a clear bottle, they look clear. But if it's red, the water look like they're red, or green, but the water never change. In our modern day, as I got smarter, I would compare it to a power of electricity. We don't know what electricity is. We know what it does. Now, there is an equal 110 volt in the wall into the outlet, right? If you plug a fan, it will go rotating. If you plug an AC, it will cool. If you plug a heater, it will provide heat, right? If you plug a TV, it will give you a movie. All that stem from electricity. Does electricity has the power of cooling, power of heating? No, the electricity is a plain energy, and based on the machine, the way it's built to benefit from the energy, that's what the performance will be. But it does not limit electricity into doing a singular or particular thing. In other words, the more devices we invent, the more uses we'll find for electricity. Shekhinah will reveal itself, will be revealed when I study Torah now with you in a certain way. When someone engaged, God forbid, in a sin, it will be lifted. When we are 10 men together, it will be in a certain way. We start studying or praying, it will be penetrating. It's not affecting the Shekhinah at all, not an iota. It is the receptacle, it's the recipient. When we build homes and put different windows, the sun's ray will affect the home, the light in the home in different ways, just like electricity. Did you understand that? So here is the rabbi continues. Despite the multitude of windows, there is but one light. The same holds true even where the light appears differently from place to place. Sunlight shining through stained glass windows of various hues remains nonetheless unchanged, though it takes on the multicolored appearance of the windows, as does also water in colored glass. Once removed from the glass, it appears in its pristine clarity. So too with the various modes in which the light of the Shekhinah is manifested. The light remains the same without change or deviation. Any differences, any division, any differences in manifestation are attributable only to the way the light is received by the object in which it is manifest. And the Rebbe concludes the chapter, and the intelligent will understand, and as Hasidim will add, the devout will perceive. Not always you need to understand, but you can take it into action. So let me just summarize the chapter. We began with two main questions. One is, what am I here? Why am I here? Especially, you will never be able to change the animal soul to become holy, because that's only a tzaddik. So my fight seems to get worse and worse, and I'm losing the battle, so to say, because as much as good as I am today, there is no guarantee about tomorrow, and most likely tomorrow the challenge will be far greater. The second is, why is there so much attention given to action in the Torah? Do. And we discovered that God, the human is compared to a flame. The human is to a candle, the flame is God. God wants us to illuminate the universe, and by doing a mitzvah, it's the only way, because mitzvah is total bitul, total nullification to God. Therefore, it can serve as fuel, as the oil that allow the flame to grow and exist. The animal soul, it is only part of our human that could serve as a mediary or a medium between the godly soul and the body, and therefore we have to be thankful to it. The animal soul will be placed in exile when it is forced by the godly soul to do a mitzvah, and the animal soul will make the body do the mitzvah. By doing so, we are totally nullified before God, and thus bringing God to us. Says the Rebbe, when we engage in a mitzvah of action, study of Torah brings the neshama connected to God. Doing a mitzvah, even though it's a particular body part, but through that body part, godliness will permeate that body part, and then will hover over the entire body. So therefore, the flame will exist above our body of godliness. And the rabbi goes on to say, that's why the Zohar says there is a light upon its head, not inside its head, because when you do a mitzvah, it's a particular body part, but it affects the entire human because it's all encompassing. And that's why when 10 men get together, assembly of 10 men, any assembly of 10 Jewish men will bring godliness to be around them as the Shrina Sharia. However, if you study Torah, engage in study or prayer, that it penetrates in the human. And the rabbi concluded that saying that the different levels of Shekhinah is not multiplicity in godliness, God forbid, because God is simple, it's the only existence, but rather the recipient, just like pulling different devices to electricity. Next chapter 36, the rabbi is going to talk about the universe. Why is it so important to bring the body to serve God? What's wrong with the soul itself serving God? And that's going to be the topic of chapter 36. I would like to wish everyone a happy Pesach. And after Passover, hopefully we'll continue and study chapter 36. Yes, Ari.